Hello and welcome to On Air. I'm Klara Serevic. Today, we're taking a look at the recent OSCE summit, unpacking what went on behind the scenes. But first, with the year wrapping up, there's something else on our minds: shopping. It's the perfect time to explore how we ourselves have become the product. There's one thing I'm particularly proud of, and it's my personal image, at least the one I'm projecting online to various advertisers. According to them, I'm a heterosexual man over 60 with erectile problems who enjoys biking, making French fries, and accessorizing my home with throw pillows adorned with pictures of male movie stars. Now, because the real me is excessively fussy about data protection, and I also benefit from Europe's more robust privacy laws, web cookies and other tracking devices haven't figured out who I am yet. But that might be about to change. Last week, we talked about how social media redefined the political landscape. Today, we'll see how blurring lines between social media and retail platforms has paved the way for control through consumption. Remember the new tools capable of reading our micro-expressions? That's just one iteration of so-called persuasive technologies, and they're already being deployed in China, mostly through consumer applications. Compared to algorithms and their content recommendations, which are based on choices we consciously make, persuasive technologies connect to the unconscious and remove human choice altogether. These technologies don't just shape what we do, they have the potential to influence who we are. In this regard, China poses a unique challenge because its political system mandates that companies align with state objectives, driving the creation and financing of commercial technologies for political purposes. It's the win without fighting doctrine, a strategy meant to shape adversaries' psychological states and behaviors. And what better way to do that than to exploit our cravings and insecurities? For example, Chinese ultra-fast fashion retail platforms are just that. Although they may not have the capacity to read micro-expressions yet, they still know way too much about us and have many influence methods at their disposal. Known for their eye-wateringly low prices and eye-wateringly toxic chemicals delivered alongside many of their products, not to mention the tears you'd shed if you knew what kind of slave labor hells those products emerged from, Chinese retail giants like Temu, Shein, and Wish have taken Western markets by storm. They create an experience where extremely cheap prices, chaotic interfaces, and constant promotions push psychological buttons, delivering dopamine hits and stoking frenzied shopping. According to Vilma Todry, the following strategies are used. Gamification, when customers are encouraged to keep shopping with bonuses mimicking rewards from video games. The perceived urgency aspect, which uses timers and countdowns to convince customers that deals are running out. Social proof persuasion techniques that highlight a product's supposed 5-star ratings or the number of customers currently buying it. Slot machine sounds that create ambient influence where button-pushing dings heighten arousal levels and a gambling thirst. Now that's what I'd call the art of the deal. These companies also have incredibly deep advertising pockets. Temu spent $4.3 billion on the US market alone last year, meaning they always top online searches. But the factor that makes these platforms impossible to avoid or compete with are their business models. Temu has been losing an average of $30 per order in the US market, and their worldwide losses have been just short of $1 billion. Their inconceivably low prices are compensated by subsidies to shipping firms or even to their own customers. They even offer free products, and often by hidden state contributions. Now, what that state may ask in return is the multi-billion-dollar question. A platform like Temu resembles TikTok's economic model in that it has cascading losses with ulterior motives, be they strictly economic, like operating at a loss in order to scale and squeeze out all competition, or more sinister, like maximum data collection. Temu is owned by the Chinese tech giant PDD. Pinduoduo, PDD's Chinese flagship company, is one of China's most popular shopping apps, selling just about anything to more than 750 million users a month. But as a CNN investigation found out, it can also bypass users' cell phone security to monitor activities on other apps, check notifications, read private messages, and change settings. And once installed, it's tough to remove. The Chinese government has been made aware of this, but didn't undertake any action besides censoring posts about those privacy breaches on Weibo, a Chinese Twitter-like platform. As stated by the US-China Economic and Security Review Commission in the US Congress,
beside concerns about product safety, use of forced labor, and violations of intellectual property rights, these platforms primarily rely on consumers downloading and using Chinese apps to curate and deliver products.
Even if data collected this way is not weaponized but only helps the company improve its machine learning model, this in itself is worth millions. Here's the aspect not many of us think about, and that's the rise of artificial intelligence, which could be a factor accelerating the concentration of economic and political power in the hands of these companies. Why? Because scale is very important in AI. Anyone looking to develop a successful application needs a lot of data and computing power. Research institutions like universities used to create AI models, but now the investments required are too big and the sheer amount of data is too large. We need to feed the monster with our shopping habits, our text messages, our pictures, our entire lives. In fact, the convergence of concerns about data collection by e-commerce platforms like Temu and social media platforms like TikTok is something that ought to be analyzed organically as one reinforces the other. Both platforms can yield enormous economic and political power, and both have been created with the explicit aim of being addictive. For instance, research in the social media domain has shown that compulsive buying is significantly affected by intense platform usage, since many people visit online retailers through recommendations or advertisements placed on social media platforms.
Users publicly show their lifestyle and belongings to their connections on social media, pushing users with lower self-esteem and fragmented identities to be more involved in compulsive shopping, to demonstrate their status to others, and to resolve their inner insecurities.
Armed with this amount of data, social media platforms and retailers can push everything we might say secretly crave but make a conscious effort not to consume, from Nicolas Cage pillows and animal memes to alcohol, gambling and photos of your ex. So yes, social media use and online shopping are also tanking our mental health. Now that's a spectacular bombshell. Considering extensive research has proven social media to be the primary peddler of screen addiction, not to mention their now well-documented noxious influence on kids, it's worth considering what amount of appetizing data we leave in there. And the more we leave, the more appetizing we become as consumers. And if you think teenagers are reckless in their e-commerce and social media use, just check what their parents are doing. Here's something to ponder before you post another picture of your child on social media. According to numbers quoted in the French Parliament, on average, 1,300 pictures of a child appear online before they reach the age of 13. And 50% of the images exchanged on pedophile forums were initially shared by parents on social media. Now, if you enjoyed posting about your toddler's potty training successes to Big Brother with a touch of creepy, you might also rejoice in the fact that a multitude of advertisers from that platform also have that picture, and possibly the Chinese government. If your son ever wants to make a career in diplomacy, that should be a fun ride. But if you're still game for a tour of ultra-fast retailers and you don't know what to get your special someone besides a French fry cooker made of asbestos, consider that you can buy actual weapons on Temu, like a submarine, for real. You'll probably find them in the hobby category. Happy holiday shopping to you all. Show at Zbich. That's Maltese for good luck. Malta is where this year's forum of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe took place. And luck is exactly what the OSCE will need as it undergoes a serious crisis. Find out what that entails in this report.
Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, arrived late to the annual ministerial meeting of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe last week, making a somewhat low-key entrance that was merely background to the larger controversy surrounding his presence. The summit, hosted in Malta, marked Lavrov's first visit to an EU country since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The significance of Lavrov's attendance was felt acutely in the corridors of the convention center.
Sergei Lavrov przyjechał tutaj, żeby kłamać.
Sergei Lavrov came here to lie about Russian aggression in Ukraine. Therefore, I will not listen to these lies in peace. Russia should either start respecting the rules of the OSCE or be excluded from the organization.
Albo zostać wykluczona z tej organizacji.
Having been placed under EU sanctions for what the European Commission described as active support to actions undermining Ukraine's territorial integrity, sovereignty and independence, Lavrov is allowed to travel in the bloc only to maintain avenues of dialogue.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Inside the assembly room, the tension was palpable. Lavrov took a seat at the large square table, positioned only 10 chairs away from Ukrainian diplomat Andriy Sybiha, who walked out of the room ahead of Lavrov's speech. This atmosphere is not new. The OSCE, which prides itself on being a consensus-based body, has been struggling to assert its relevance and purpose while one of its key members, Russia, repeatedly obstructs decision-making processes. With critical internal votes stalled, including those on the organization's budget, its ability to act as a stabilizing force in Europe is compromised. A similar tension had flared at the OSCE summit in Skopje late last year, when Lavrov's attendance triggered a boycott by Ukraine and key allies. Central to the current diplomatic quandary is the fate of the OSCE's Special Monitoring Mission, or SMM, to Ukraine. Established on March 21, 2014, and operational through March 31, 2022, it was an unarmed civilian mission, mandated to observe and report on the security situation. But with Russia's launch of its full-scale invasion, the mission's work ground to a halt. The demise of the SMM underscored not only the severity of the conflict, but the OSCE's inability to sustain its on-the-ground conflict prevention tools. Questions over Russia's role within the OSCE have existed long before the current period of hot war. Back in 2018, a scandal erupted when German broadcaster ARD reported that Russia's Federal Security Service had obtained confidential OSCE documents, including detailed personal information about its monitors working in eastern Ukraine. All of these controversies leave the OSCE facing a fundamental existential question. Is it a forum of democratic values, or simply a set of diplomatic commitments maintained by states with radically different standards of behavior?
We're here with Dr. Aleksandra Kozioł from the Polish Institute of International Affairs. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you for the invitation.
We intend to analyze the OSCE meeting in Malta, but my first question will be a bit of a provocation. Why are we even talking about this? I mean, it looks like the organization has lost its relevance.
I think that's a very good starting point. The OSCE would be a relevant organization if all its member states were open for dialogue. If we just have a step back and look at the 1990s when the OSCE was established, that was a very particular situation in Europe. And its roots, the roots of the OSCE go even further to the 1970s, when the idea of having a structured dialogue, a dialogue about security measures in Europe between the West and the East emerged. If we look at the organization itself, then definitely the idea that was behind it is still relevant in Europe. But because the organization works on a consensus-based measure, then if we don't have partners that want to have a dialogue, what can we do about it?
It's a bit like the UN. There's a certain paralysis there. One of the reasons for this within the OSCE is that it encompasses many post-Soviet countries that have become hotly contested battlegrounds between, broadly speaking, the West and Russia. Those include, I don't know, Georgia, Moldova, Armenia, even Romania recently. Is this one of the reasons, you think, for the paralysis of this particular organization?
Well, OSCE is a regional organization focused on security measures in Europe. So we still have a lot of challenges, unresolved issues here on the ground. You mentioned some of them that we can just think of the war in Ukraine, then the unresolved separatist movement of Transnistria in Moldova, the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the occupied territories of Georgia, occupied by Russia, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. So, like, we have a lot to do here. Well, I'm sorry to say, but I think that the main reason why the OSCE is paralyzed is Russia. It decided at the political level that it will no longer want to have a proper structured dialogue within the organization. Let's just have a look at the last ministerial meeting in Malta. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, left the room when his counterpart from the US, Antony Blinken, was speaking. So this is like clearly visible that Russia is no longer willing to have a proper dialogue with other members of the organization.
Well, however, I'm sorry to interrupt, but many other delegations left the room when Lavrov was speaking himself. I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but Poland's foreign minister left the building as well.
Yeah, Poles, representatives of Baltic states and Czechia, if I'm not mistaken. But this was a clear reaction to the actions that Russia has taken over several years. If we get back to 2022, when Russia waged a full-scale war against Ukraine, it decided on its own that it wanted to destroy the security architecture in Europe. That was solely Russia's decision. Then, if we look at the OSCE itself, Russia from 2022 is effectively blocking annual budget for the organization. And this is something that makes the organization paralyzed because it can no longer finance its activities, the ones that already are in place. And what's even more important, can no longer implement new activities that could affect, I guess, Russia as well. Because if we look at what sort of issues the OSCE is covering, this is political and military ones, and I think this is super relevant in current situation. Environmental and economic ones, these may be less controversial. And then we have human rights and democracy issues that are, again, very, very relevant if we look at our eastern neighbor.
Yeah, obviously, I can't see any consensus happening on that ground. However, I mean, the organization was set up as a place for dialogue and cooperation, mostly between the Soviet Union and the US. Now, is there any chance that any subject matter could be a topic of cooperation between the US and Russia within the OSCE?
If we look at Russia's behavior, I would say no, because Russia is not willing to have any sort of dialogue, at least with current American administration. We will see what will happen next year when Donald Trump will officially become American president. But for now, if you look at the behavior of Russia, that they want to have a dialogue. And if they don't want to do that, what can you do about it? You need a partner in order to establish some sort of line of conversation.
Since the OSCE, as you mentioned, has not had an approved budget since 2021, well, I guess it might just wither like a plant, not being watered. We'll see what happens. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching. Next week is a holiday episode. We'll focus on art and culture censorship. See you soon.